Coming to you from the city where toilet paper was invented, it's Ventriloquism Weekly. Hey everyone, Matt Bailey here, and welcome in because we have a great guest today. I'm so excited. Pastor David Weyrick is here, and I couldn't ask for a better guest for today. Not that I tried, but for the first 18 minutes of our interview, I couldn't get a word in edgewise, and I love it. It's awesome. Why am I thrilled Pastor Weyrick is with us today? Because he has a very inspirational story to share on a very special episode. At least it's special to me. People ask, they said, Matt, what are you going to do for your 50th episode? Is it going to be something special? Do something special for number 50? Sure, it's round, but it's arbitrary to me as far as the number of episodes go. Now, we're a few weeks away from our 50th guest, which is something special. But in terms of episodes, number 52 is where it's at for me. This means that you can listen to an episode of this weekly program once a week for an entire year. And I'm excited about it because I never thought we'd get to that point. So happy 52nd, everyone. I love my job. I'm not trying to get any kudos or anything. I'm saying it to you guys. I'm thanking you for 52 great episodes, a year's worth of weekly listening now on our website. I'm very excited. Now, with that out of the way, you know him from his spectacular performance this year at Vent Haven. Here to share with us his inspiring journey of return to this art form, Pastor David Weyrick. David Weyrick, welcome to Ventriloquism Weekly. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastically, Matt. Thank you again for the honor, indeed the honor of being able to do this. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, well, the honor is all mine. It's wonderful to have you. I'm so excited about this. First question, do we address you as pastor, as doctor, as David? What do we do? Because such an accomplished gentleman.
Just don't call me late for supper. That's the old line I'm supposed to come back. Doesn't matter. David's fine.
That's cool. I just wanted to I want to brag on you a little bit because I was reading your bio on the church website, and you've done a lot of cool stuff. You were a musician, studied music in school. How did you come to ventriloquism?
Well, yeah, like so many other people that you've interviewed, I don't know if we're just all wired this way or what, but I had a fascination with puppets back when I was just a wee little kid.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture of me, like at 3 years old, holding a puppet. But I grew up with a box of puppets in the basement. My father, he was a child of the Depression, and my grandmother made marionettes.
Oh, cool.
On puppet shows for the neighborhood and stuff. And so my brothers and I grew up with this box of marionettes and hand puppets. And so we put on Punch and Judy shows. We had our own little cardboard stage. And I can even remember back when I was like 5 years old, for Christmas Eve, we got to open a present before we went to church, and opened up, and it was a puppet. I got to take my puppet to Christmas Eve service, and wow, everybody was singing Silent Night with a candle or something. I've got my puppet in the back of the pews, my little stage. So I grew up with puppets, and I had hand puppets, pirate puppet, I had a turtle puppet, a crow puppet, anyway. But the defining moment for me as a kid was, I'll never forget, it was the 1965 Miss America contest, and got to stay up to watch that, and was a contestant, Vonda K. Van Dyke, Miss Arizona, and she was a ventriloquist. She had her puppet, Curly Q, and I'm watching this as a kid. This is long before there's any video recorders of any way, shape, or form. It's live, and that's it. I'm watching, and I'm mesmerized by this. And I remember it's the first time I'd actually sort of heard the words ventriloquist, and I just thought, that is so cool. So I begged to be able to stay up to see if she would win, and then she won Miss America, and when she's walking the runway and waving, I'm thinking, where's Curly Q? With you. You should have him with you. But that kind of like sparked this interest, and then the other people my age in the baby boom generation, the Jimmy Nelson commercials and Paul Winchell on television, I really got this fascination. But I didn't know where to turn to. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. I'm just a kid. So in the local newspaper in Akron, Ohio, where I'm from, still live there. The newspaper had this thing called Action Line, the column. And this is long before there was internet. And we had libraries and books, and that's about it. So you could write in with questions to this Action Line, and they would come back with the answers or whatever. So I wrote a letter to the Action Line saying, I don't know where to turn or whatever. And it was published about a week later. But it was really cool because the writer of the column, I remember his name was Craig Wilson, a journalist, rewrote it and did it in a cool way. And he put, I am a would-be Edgar Bergen, and I'm looking for a wood, W-O-O-D, a would-be Charlie McCarthy. And the column then was in the paper, and it explained about this book, how Ventriloquism for Fun and Profit, which he had put personally on reserve at the downtown library for me, and then it talked about also the Juro Novelty Company out in New York. So I begged my parents, I said, please, can you take me down? I got to get this book. I got to get this book. So they took me downtown to the big library in downtown Akron. I got this book. Fascinated by it. Yeah. But it talked about how to make a puppet, a dummy, and I couldn't do that. So we then went to Juro Novelty Company at the time, which was the big seller of the various puppets, and I ordered a Danny O'Day.
Oh, that is awesome.
But this is long before Amazon Prime and 2-day delivery and overnight stuff.
Right.
3 weeks for the letter and the check to get there and all this stuff. And I would run home from school, and the torture that I went through waiting for this puppet. And finally it came, along with the record, Jimmy Nelson's record, Instant Ventriloquism. Others have talked about it.
That is a classic.
I got the puppet, I got the record, and I'm listening to that record over and over and over again, and learning the same. Jimmy had these phrases that he practiced on, and I would say them all. I'd walk around school going, values in veal and venison, and the boy bought a basketball, and learning all these phrases, and it was just incredible. So I get him, and I'm practicing with him, and I'm all excited, and I'm real happy about this, and everything's great and wonderful, and all of a sudden then I've got this I decide I got to put on a show.
Mm-hmm.
So I get for my neighborhood. So I make posters, and I invite my friends to come to my house, and I'm going to be ready to put on this show. And I remember it was going to be me, and of course I didn't call him Danny O'Day. I called him Joey, because there was only one Danny O'Day, and I needed a name that I didn't have to move my lips with. And so Joey seemed to work the best. And so I did that one, used Joey. And so what I did then was I decided, okay, I got my routine. It was pretty much the Jimmy Nelson routine. It was the stock thing that came with the record, which was fine. But I go out and I do this and I perform this, and I start, and I borrow chairs for my living room, and I start, and all my friends are there, and like a couple minutes into it, they all start laughing and saying, "This is stupid, man. This is dumb. This is dumb." You know? And I was just so embarrassed. And then here, I guess, was this defining moment for me. Kind of like defining moment number 2. I guess one would be Bond at K. Van Dyke on TV, but defining moment number 2 is the fact, what's going on here? Now, I wish I could say, yeah, man, I didn't let that bother me, and I went on, and I started doing church basements, and I started going on to talent shows, and I started, doing blue and gold banquets, and I took that puppet, and I threw him in the box. And I cried myself to sleep that night as a kid, because I never would do that again. Here, I wanted to be a ventriloquist, and I said, I am not doing that again. I am not going through that pain and that embarrassment again at all. And that was it. Joey went in the box, and I still had this fascination for puppets and ventriloquism. Could not miss an episode of The Muppet Show. I mean, and there was a local TV show out of Cleveland, Captain Cleveland, and there was a ventriloquist on there named John, and his buddy Clem, and I would go home, run home from school, even into high school to watch this because I still had this fascination with ventriloquism because I loved watching Vent on TV. Again, Jimmy Nelson, Paul Winchell, Willie Tyler, and it was such a cool thing for me to meet him. Oh my gosh, that was incredible, and I was so appreciative of getting a chance to chat with him at the convention.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Awesome
so
guy.
Anyway, I started this fascination. I went on to high school, went to college. I majored in music, majored in clarinet and saxophone. Ended up then, which is really interesting because the artistic disciplines overlap so much.
Yes, they do, very much.
In that whole process of studying music, I learned about proper breathing, proper articulation. I learned about practicing because, in my heyday, I was practicing 3-4 hours a day, and so you learn the discipline of that. And I played professionally for quite a few years. Ended up getting my master's in music. I taught music and drama in a high school, directed plays, that kind of stuff, and then answered this call to ministry that I've had really felt pretty much all my life. Got
Wonderful.
Married, and we had 2 kids, but my kids grew up with puppets in the house because I still had hand puppets, and I still loved hand puppets.
Oh, that's awesome.
Puppet shows and everything like that, but I certainly wasn't going to go out in public with it.
Right.
I didn't want to face that humiliation again. But what was interesting was that as my wife, Beth, had an extensive background in church puppetry, church puppet ministries, behind the curtain,
yeah,
odd arm Muppet type puppets, and very good. And so when I was first got to the church that I'm at now, I've been there for quite a while, we were debating, figuring out what we can do with a junior high group, and he came up with the idea of developing a junior high puppet ministry. So and that was great, but that was kind of her thing. And but I remember, and this is probably 20 years ago, going to a puppetry conference.
Oh, cool.
Which was put on by One Way Street at that time. That's what it was called, Liz Von Sagan.
Yes.
And I went along as a tag along, kind of like just as a chaperone, whatever. And there was a workshop on ventriloquism. And I'm going, So I went to the workshop. It was taught by Liz.
Awesome.
And she's going through all of this stuff. And here we go. This is like this defining moment again because I'm thinking, I can do that. Kind of like, I'm dating myself, but a chorus line. I can do that. Chorus line.
Yeah.
I can do that. And all those phrases kept coming back to me. Values in veal and venison, and if fortune follows a fellow, he's fine. I think this is very cool. I can do this. And I'm driving my wife nuts during the conference saying these things. And so I got to get a puppet now. Because there was no way I was opening that box up again. Nope, I'm not going to Joey.
Mm-hmm.
So at the conference, then I start looking around for puppets, and there was like the first generation Axtels. And so I picked up one of the first generation, not the soft vinyl; these were hard vinyl.
Yeah.
Toucan puppets, the Talkatoo puppets. So started using that.
Wow.
I still always wanted to be a ventriloquist. I thought, well, okay, I want to be. Let me try this again here. So I got this puppet and started putzing around with him at home and trying it out on my young kids. And so I started doing children's messages at the church, still wanting to be a vet, but also practicing a lot, learning the discipline of practice. And so I started doing kids' messages at the church, and it was going went well. I always did the kids' messages anyway, but this time I started using a puppet. And it kind of took off, and people were saying, man, that was great, that was cool, kids liked it. I was pretty much in. So about every other week, I would just do it at the church, but so that would take off. But then, as the church started growing, and as we more and more people in the church started growing, we all of a sudden had to bring on a children's ministry director because we couldn't handle. We needed somebody to oversee that, a paid staff member.
Right.
Who then took over the children's messages, which was fine. As the church was growing, there were things that I had to give up, and that was fine. And so I sort of handed that over to her and said, I want to be a ventriloquist, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt me not to get this up.
Right.
And that was fine. And I gave it up. But I helped my wife with the puppet ministry, the behind the scenes puppet ministry. The curtain puppet ministry, rod
Yeah,
arm type stuff.
that's very cool.
And I performed in that with her and stuff. Had a great time and loved doing it. But we then we would eventually go back to this puppet festival every couple of years or whatever to learn and this, that, or the other, because it was just held near Columbus, Ohio, which is about 2 hours. And they would put it on every year. And I never, but they would have these ventriloquist workshops at the festival. And I'm not going, nah, I'm done. I wanted to be a ventriloquist, but that's just not going to happen. So finally, then, so about maybe just like 4 or 5 years ago, we did go, and I went to the vent workshop. And I put up
Awesome.
with a guy named Gene Cordova. I'll never forget Gene Cordova. I met him.
Mm-hmm.
Guy who did a lot of church stuff and a lot of other things as well, and I chatted quite a bit with him. And he's saying things, and again, I'm thinking, I could do that. I do that. I picked his brain, and there were some other puppets that were there, and I thought, I think, I'm gonna try this again. I'm not going to Joey. Nope. He's staying in the box in my parents' attic. That's where he belongs. And
Right.
so I got a couple hand puppets, and so I said, I want to be a ventriloquist. So I tried it again, and this time it went over well again. And I talked to our children's director and said, can I do this once a month? I'll do the kids' message. Sure. So and so I was doing it. I was kind of getting into it more and more and more and more, and also. Now, this time around, sort of like this third or fourth defining moment in my life, now we've got the tool of YouTube.
Yes.
To now watch other vents going, dang, that's incredible. And I didn't know anybody pretty much self-taught on it.
Mm-hmm.
Then came like another yet defining moment when my wife and I and my son went on vacation, and this is 2012, just 2 years ago, spring of 2012, and we were going to go through Cincinnati and we're looking for things in Cincinnati, and I said to my wife, there's a ventriloquist museum in Cincinnati, Bend Haven, and said, I got to go. I want to see what this is. I think this would be very cool. So we made an appointment and we went, and at that time, the curator was a gal named Jennifer, and she's not there anymore, but she said, there's a convention. I said, what? She goes, yeah, there's a convention. I said, no, I'm not good enough for any convention. I wouldn't be able to. She said, you don't have to be good. I said, listen, I just want to be a ventriloquist. I'm just learning. I'm not a ventriloquist. I'm just learning how to do this. And she goes, no, so you can just show up and learn it. Okay. And I went, and it was amazing because there were all kinds of weird people like me there.
Yes.
Everybody has got similar stories, and I kind of felt like John Denver in his Rocky Mountain High coming home to a place he's never been before. It was, it just and just like amazing. So even the first night we're back in our room, my wife and I at the convention. We'd gone to the museum in May. The convention was in July, and I said, I really feel that God may be calling me to take this up another notch.
Very good.
Pastors, we always talk spiritually about these things.
Yes.
And I said, but I got to, she goes, well, what's that going to mean? I said, I don't know. I just know I got to take a lot of notes and pay a lot of attention and listen to a lot of people and ask a lot of questions. And I said, but I'm going to need something more than just this little, toucan puppet in these little hand puppets that I've been using. And so I said, let's, we'll look around and see what we can find. And so I kind of said, God, if you're going to lead me to a puppet or whatever, just, sort of let me know. And so I went over to one table and looked at the price tag and said, well, you're not leading me there. And there was on Marianne Taylor's table with this puppet that, nobody was paying any attention to. They were picking up all these others and people were putzing with them and everything. And this one's kind of in the back of the table. And look at this puppet. I really like the look. I really like it. So I kind of picked him up and then all of a sudden started using him. It's like, whoa. And so I said to my wife, she was in the room, come down here. I want you to see this puppet. And so she saw it, and she said, wow. And so, I then kind of said, I asked Marianne's daughter, Melissa, I said, what is it? You got a name for this thing or whatever? She goes, oh, I just called it a critter puppet. And I said, that's it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I said, do you want to come home with me? and so I picked him up, and then he sort of now has become my main go-to. And at the convention, I talked to other people. I learned a great deal. I just, whatever. And then after that, I started seeking other venues and started pushing myself. Again, the musician side coming out, because if you don't stretch yourself, you're not going to get stretched. And I started practicing. I started videotaping myself. And then I really got interested in the double rod arm because I had been doing that in the church's puppet ministry anyway.
Yeah.
So incorporating that into the using it with Critter, I started with just one rod arm and then ventured out into two. And so I started moving forward in that, and I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to watch myself. Started posting some things on YouTube as well, because I want to be a ventriloquist, but I had some unfinished business that I had to do if I was going to move forward, and that was eventually I had to get Joey out of the box.
Yes.
And that was kind of this defining catharsis for me, which I had to do because, I opened the box and realized that he hadn't aged a bit, and the rubber band in his mouth had rotted. So I had to get a new rubber band, and I actually said, okay, I've got to do this for my own personal edification as an artist or as a whatever. I didn't want anybody to report it or anything like that, so I did a kid's message. But one person in the congregation, luckily with a cell phone, recorded that, and that became sort of like this thing where I sort of stepped out of the past and said, no, I'm moving forward. So, but then I got involved, found out about the International Ventriloquist Society, the IVS, started reading the Mayer books that had been published, and then they put them out digitally on Kindle.
Yeah.
Then I saw about the Mayer Interactive course.
Yes, you are the first graduate of the Mayer Interactive course, which congratulations.
Thank you.
How were you able to jump in there real quick?
Well, I, got the course, and it's basically you get the videotapes, or not video tapes, but the videos of the instructions. And it's Ken Groves and Tom Crowell and Mark Wade, and they go basically through the old Mayer course syllabus, but in a format that's on video. But as they're talking, again, I can do that.
Right.
There's quite a lesson on Ken Groves on breathing and proper breath support. And I said, I can do that. I did that, as a musician, I do that.
Yeah, even for me in theater, one of our classes was voice and movement. So again, that crossover between the art disciplines is very interesting to see.
It is. And an artist, I don't care whether it's a dancer, a ventriloquist, a musician, an actor, you learn the discipline of practice. And you learn the discipline of breath support, you learn the discipline. So these all are, they just overlap so much. So but one thing that really, really kicked in for me was the lesson on the labials.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I'm a child of the 60s, and so I learned the substitutions, the letter substitutions to Jimmy's records, okay?
Right.
But I had figured out on my own F's and V's and things, but I still, like everybody else, struggle with D, M, and T.
Yeah.
Until Ken Groves explained his technique for that. My music background totally came into that with that technique.
Yes.
And I can tell you that was like finding moment number 7 or 8. I don't know. But it was like, whoa, And then I was off and rolling. And everything they said I'd already learned through, or they reinforced things I had already known and helped me
Right.
pick it up a notch. Proper this and manipulation and care and things like that. And so the way the course works is you have 3 lessons, and then you meet via Skype with a vent. You have 3 more via Skype, 3 more via Skype. And you work through Ken Groves, and you got to get through him to get to Tom Crowell, and you got to get through him to get to Mark Wade. And it was a wonderful, phenomenal, fantastic experience. But here again, and this might sound kooky to anybody listening to this, you're thinking, what is this guy, nutso?
No, not at all.
No, it is. I always wanted to be a vent. I want to be a ventriloquist. I want to be a ventriloquist. I want to be a ventriloquist. And so I took this course, and then all of a sudden, I'm like the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz, who said, I just want to have a brain. And at the end, the wizard says, well, they've got one thing you haven't got. They have a diploma. I got this diploma, and I said, hey, I am a ventriloquist.
Woo!
I don't want to be. I am.
Awesome.
And for me, that was kind of cool. I mean, I just did, and so because of that, I'm like I said, I'm stepping out beyond the church of doing, some nursing homes and some got a community luncheon. I'm doing a Shriners thing. I'm doing all these things and sort of stepping out. But one thing I wanted to do was I wanted to go back to a convention and participate in the open mic.
And you did.
Which I did, yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You were about to. I was going to ask what that was like, and it sounded like you were about to start telling us. So go ahead.
That was a great learning experience, and I encourage anybody to do it because it really is quite the thing. They give you so much time, and that's it, 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And Bob Rumba, you've got a light there, and that pressure's on. And boy, I had to fly through my routine to get done. But just the experience of leading up and trying to practice what you're going to do, and that's good. And as I was standing backstage, I felt like a lot of the same sort of excitable nerves that I had experienced before many times as a musician and whatever. Not a panic nerve, but an excitement of, I want to go out and do this.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. It's kind of
and it's funny because Bob Rumba came out afterwards and said he did 6 minutes. Learn from him.
Yeah.
I linked to the video in the description, guys. Take a look because it's really good. And one thing I want to touch on that you do with Critter is that for the first 3 minutes straight, it's just him talking. It is just Critter going at it and just on and on and on. And I'm going, holy crap.
It tend to be more, and I do a kids' message at church, that's one thing. But when I do a program, I am much more, and this is a technique that I actually think Ken Groves. It's more like his school in some ways. Is the puppet is the star.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't tell jokes well at all, and my wife's always criticized me because I don't have much of a sense of humor, or it's subtle and nobody catches it.
Yeah.
So, but I can tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
So I can elaborate on a joke or whatever and tell a story and let the puppet do all the storytelling, and I'm just rocking and rolling with that because the puppet knows their start. So I don't do a lot of back and forth setup punchline, back and forth setup punchline. Whereas and with my Critter puppet, it's wonderful the way it worked out because I was able to create a whole history and world for him in like 15 minutes, and can elaborate into that. He's from this made-up place called Kentucky, and all the characters that I've been able to now bring in various venues, his grandmother and Pastor Fred at the church, and his cousin Clyde, and he now has a girlfriend which is a puppet, who Marianne Taylor made a girl puppet in the same design, and to which I named Marianne after her. And so his girlfriend Marianne, and so we're able, and it's kind of like again, the like a small town kind of the '60s sitcom of the Andy Griffith Show, Mayberry, kind of this character development. And in the whole, and I kind of researched a little bit, read a little bit on the internet about the whole Andy Griffith Show thing, which in itself has its place in television history.
Absolutely.
Was very, very adamant as and even produced and was involved in it. We don't tell jokes. We don't tell jokes on our show.
Right.
And do jokes. They set up stories. So anyway, it was a phenomenal thing to do that at the convention. Now, but something else that helped me at the convention was, and sometimes people don't realize this at the convention, but if you look around, and you'll see maybe sitting on a table or something, a little thing, and I was at Marianne Taylor's table talking with her, chatting with her, and there's a sign, and it's this thing from Dan Horn, and it says, if you'd be interested in learning rod arm from Dan Horn, contact him during the convention for a lesson. I'm going, that's what I need. I wanted to kick up my rod arm technique.
Mm-hmm.
So I met with him for one lesson and went back for another one, and I had to learn everything all over again. I had to start all over from scratch and essentially forget everything that I had done with the behind the curtain technique to develop for the ventriloquial technique. And I realized that my left hand was just absolutely awful. and there's a great quote that from the great puppeteer Jerry Nelson, who was with the Muppets for years and years and years, did Count on Count and many, many others.
Yes.
And in reading Jim Henson's biography, Jerry's quoted as saying, "Your left hand is stupid if you're right-handed." And so my left hand was stupid, and I really had to work hard. I had these exercises I do to try to strengthen the grip. And I'm getting the hang of that technique. And I had to relearn and really retrain myself how to do that. And I practice it every day. Anything, again, my music background, I practice every day. And it doesn't matter if my venue is going to be a handful of kids at the church or whatever, or if I'm going to be, doing this thing for this big Shriners luncheon or whatever. Still, it's the quality that we need to have in what we do. And I don't know who, Tim Groves or Tom Crowell, somebody said, we all need to be doing the best we can, lest we give each other a bad name.
Right.
And somebody, I saw a ventriloquist once, that guy was awful, and we don't want that for everybody. Mm-hmm. Whether it's all the way from Terry Fader all the way down to, the person doing the whatever at the Vacation Bible School, we still, I believe, have an important standard to uphold. And I'm all about that. So I did learn that but even if my practice is nothing more than just going through my basic routine or my basic things with my rod arms that I do, just the basic exercises every day, just to make sure that I'm going to keep and maintain and continue to build on. But
yeah, and that is an important message, to just practice every day.
Oh yeah. But the way I see it, though, unfortunately, is I'm like 40 years behind where I could have been, and I got a lot of catching up to do.
Well, let me tell you, you're doing a great job of catching up. It was really fun to see that video and to watch you work, because it's I'm trying to ascribe to the Ken Grove School, as you say, and make it more about doing a storytelling thing with the character and not just so much back and forth, because that's been done. And not, no disrespect to anybody that's do it. There are people that do it very well, but just freshening it up and doing it in a different way, which is what you do, and it's all about originality. And from what I see in that video, it's very original. And that
there's a bunch more online too. A guy at my church records them and puts those together and throws them up on YouTube, and you can just put in ventriloquist Pastor David, and up they come. So and my catharsis moment is there with Joey. If anybody wants to see somebody that it was another defining moment for me, I'm not using him again. He's retired, but
very cool. Now, my last question for you, David, and I think I might know where you're going because you talk a lot about practice. But what do you want to see from the ventriloquist community that you are now jumping in full force at? To what do you want to see from the ventriloquist coming up today?
I think that for all of us, and no matter what art we are in, and like you said, this is one of those things that overlap. An appreciation for those who have come before,
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunity to listen and ask questions and take advantage of that. Let me tell you a story. When I was young, in my very early 20s, I was playing not only legitimate clarinet, but jazz clarinet, and especially Dixieland. And I was doing this, and I thought I was hot stuff. And I went to a Dixieland festival, which a Dixieland festival is where all these musicians will come together, and people, it's understood that you know what you're going to do enough that you can break up into groups and start, playing. And I'll never forget this moment. It was on Sunday afternoon, and it was a beautiful day, and it was at a gazebo outside at this library, and they doubled us up. They did doubles, meaning for that set there would be 2 trumpet players, 2 trombone players, 2 clarinet players to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got teamed up with Mo. Now, Mo was like 90 years old. This guy was ancient. He had played during the Roaring '20s, and he was so old. He had this an Albert system clarinet, which doesn't mean anything probably to any listener, but nobody uses that anymore. I mean, those are like nobody. And this ancient clarinet, ancient guy. And my first thought, as I'm young and stupid, is I'm going to blow this guy out of the water, And it came time for the solos to be passed around as in Dixieland tradition, and it was my turn, and I went with my clarinet, and I'm wailing away, and I'm doing every single solitary form of clarinet gymnastic that there is, and I'm all over the place and squealing, and people start, clapping, and, well, then Mo started.
Oh, no.
And Mo didn't do any gymnastics. He just started it low and slow, like we were going to church, and just had that audience in his palm of his hand, and he built it up, and he built it up, and he built it up, and it was, by the end of it, man, it just like people were on their feet.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I felt like about 2 inches tall. And after the set was over, I went over to him, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "you're good." He said, "You may know a lot, but you've got a lot to learn." And he was right. And I got to see him a couple more times over the years before he passed away, and I picked his brain from that moment on. And I listened to that guy, and I paid attention to him. And I've learned that in whatever discipline you're in, and I've carried this now over to Vince, is I'm paying attention to these people. I'm learning from the masters. And we have this incredible tool of YouTube to watch people and pay attention to what they're doing and say, I like that, and then taking that and working that to make your own. You got to know your basics in anything. If you don't know the rules, you can't break the rules. You got to know the basics. There's no compromising that. Just like in music where you got to learn your scales and all these things, you have to learn your basics.
Right.
You learn from others, and then you can say, wow, at the last convention, there were 2 kids standing there. I saw this, and they had these puppets, and Bill DeMar was sitting in this seat, in his chair. I talked to him a couple times. He wouldn't know me from Adam, but
right.
I knew we chatted.
Right.
But here's the master. This guy was a master. And you look at some of his stuff, and this guy was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's explaining to these 2 kids, 12, 13 years old, and one is like right there, and the other kid's puffing on his phone and not paying any attention. And I wanted to go over and say, "Do you know who this is? There's an opportunity here." But we pay attention to those who came before us, and so I mean that's advice to every one of us, because we learn from these masters and what they're doing. But I guess if there's anything that I'd want to say to this whatever, this young generation, whatever you refer to them, if there's a kid out there who like decides he wants to put on a show and everybody laughs at him, blow that off.
Yeah.
Keep going. Say, peer group pressure doesn't mean anything after high school. I didn't do that, and I wish I would have. And now, like I said, I'm quite a few years behind, and I'm trying to make up for lost time. the spirit is willing, but the flesh is getting older. And but I would say to anybody, don't let anybody, laugh you out of this or talk you out or whatever. Follow that and roll with that. Don't give up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. But I've done all the talking. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I love when we talk and we get these super long, over 30-minute episodes. It's always wonderful to hear. And you had such a wonderful story and such wonderful insights, especially coming back to it. So it is just wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for your time, Pastor David Weyrick. Thank you so much, Pastor.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pastor. Wonderful time talking with you. May you continue to enjoy finally being a ventriloquist. That's it for us this week. Next week, catch the Action Brothers, or Action Bros, Craig Sargent and Lou Newton, a.k.a. Johnny Action and Max Action. A reminder, you can find all you need to know about Ventriloquism Weekly by visiting our website. I combined the two words there. Website, or as I like to call it, mothership. I almost said webship. I don't know. Website, our mothership, ventriloquismweekly.com. Reach out by emailing ventriloquismweekly@gmail.com and find our group on Facebook by searching Ventriloquism Weekly -podcast for ventriloquists. Tweet us or tweet about us at or hashtag TALKFOR2, Talk for Two. From New York, signing off for Ventriloquism Weekly, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding all you vents out there to keep talking for two.